On a seemingly ordinary day, on June 1st, 1986, 16-year-old Elaine Doyle ventured out for a night of fun with her friends at Greenock Celtic Supporters Club. Little did she know that this would be her last outing. The club, originally established as a charitable organization for the impoverished in Glasgow's East End, was the backdrop for a chilling mystery that unfolded that night. In the quiet town of Greenock, Scotland, Elaine disappeared without a trace, leaving her family completely unaware of the impending tragedy. The following morning, the town awoke to the sound of sirens and police cars, as everyone grappled with the question of what could have happened to this young woman during the short 15-minute journey from the club to her home. Was she deliberately targeted? And if so, what could anyone possibly have against a teenage girl? The roots of Greenock, Scotland, can be traced back to 1711, when a fishing community laid claim to the land. Over the next 2 centuries, the village flourished into a bustling port and industrial hub. During World War II, it even served as a French naval base. With its rich history, the picturesque town attracts many tourists. However, despite its allure, Greenock is not particularly known for its security. Sadly, Elaine Doyle's case was just one of many tragedies that occurred during that time. Elaine was the cherished daughter of Maureen and Jack Doyle, with her brother John being her only sibling. She was a bright and optimistic young girl. She always looked towards the future. At the age of 16, when she vanished, she was already working at a jewelry store. Thanks to her warm and inviting personality, she had a vast circle of friends. Among her citizens' band, named CB Radio Friends, she was affectionately known as the Golden Girl due to her affinity for the color yellow. On June 1st, 1986, had gone to the Green Act Celtic Supporters Club to enjoy a night out with these same friends. Her compassionate nature and friendly demeanor often led her to volunteer at social clubs like this one. She informed her mother that she would be returning home late that night, around midnight. However, when Elaine didn't arrive even after the expected time, Maureen, trusting her daughter's judgment, simply assuming that she had stayed over at a friend's house for the night. It wasn't until the morning of June 2nd that the family would wake up to devastating news. As Maureen opened her living room curtains, she was met with the sight of numerous police cars parked outside in the neighborhood. Later, she would discover that a local resident had stumbled upon a body dumped on a lane across Arguin Street, where Elaine resided, during his morning walk at 7:30 a.m. Due to the close-knit nature of the town, he immediately recognized Elaine's face. Horrified, he promptly contacted the police. The responsibility of delivering the tragic news to the family fell upon the police. The family was shattered upon identifying the lifeless body. No parents should ever have to witness the state in which Elaine's corpse was found. Her body bore severe bruising, particularly evident as deep purple marks along her neck. She was completely unclothed, with only a bra attached to her arm. However, her clothes were neatly folded and placed beside her. Given the visible bruising on her neck, the police suspected that strangulation was the likely cause of death. Additionally, the presence of a black eye led the investigating officers to believe that Elaine had fought back against her attacker. Upon receiving the autopsy report, their suspicions were confirmed as the cause of death was officially determined to be asphyxiate due to strangulation by ligature. The autopsy findings also indicated that Elaine was likely strangled while facing downwards, with the culprit tightening the ligature from behind her neck. Forensic scientist Pauline McSorley, who conducted the autopsy, discovered DNA evidence on Elaine's face and chest. Additionally, broken pieces of bracelets and chunks of hair were found near the body. The presence of extensive bruising and defensive wounds further supported the police's belief that a struggle had taken place between the culprit and the victim. Unfortunately, the crime scene had not been properly handled, with evidence being mishandled without protective gear. As a result, over 41 DNA samples were found at the scene, all of which were accounted for except for one. It was theorized that this remaining unaccounted sample belonged to the culprit. Through questioning Elaine's friends in the neighborhood, the authorities were able to establish her whereabouts until midnight, when she was with her friend Lynn McCurdy. They had separated from their other friends to buy hamburgers, making them the last known individuals to have seen Elaine alive. After that point, none of her friends reported seeing her again. A local girl claimed to have heard loud screams around 12:40 a.m., but no further useful details were available to the authorities. The severity of the incident and the extent of abuse suggested a possible sexual motive behind the attack. The detectives successfully located Elaine's handbag outside the Watt Library on Union Street on June 9th. The bag had been severely burned, indicating an attempt to destroy any potential evidence. The case of Elaine Doyle is renowned as one of the most extensive manhunts in Scotland's history. It involved conducting numerous interviews and compiling a suspect list that exceeded 700 individuals. Despite these efforts, the investigators were unable to identify the perpetrator. Even after exploring multiple leads and conducting numerous interviews, the investigators remained no closer to solving the heinous crime. Eventually, the case went cold as no new leads emerged. Over the years, Elaine's parents and the entire community anxiously awaited answers. The case remained a perplexing mystery, and hope began to fade. However, in 2012, nearly 28 years after Elaine's death, renewed interest in the case arose when investigators stumbled upon old case files. They discovered that John Doherty, a person of interest mentioned in the reports, had never been interviewed. Several witnesses had cited him near the crime scene on the night of the incident. Intrigued by this revelation, the investigators decided to pursue it further. Upon further inquiry, they found that Doherty had even been mentioned in a statement during the initial investigation, but for unknown reasons, he was never questioned. Although the detectives did not have high expectations due to the significant passage of time, they felt compelled to speak with him in order to tie up loose ends. Doherty, who was 21 years old at the time of the incident, initially claimed that he was at his parents' house in Greenock. However, under further police questioning, he eventually admitted to being at the disco on the night of the incident. In order to fulfill their final requirement, the police requested a DNA sample from Doherty, which he willingly provided. The shock was overwhelming once the police inputted the information into the database. It was revealed that John Doherty's DNA was a perfect match to the one found at the crime scene and on Elaine Doyle's body. Born in 1964 and residing in Dunoon, Argyll in Scotland, Doherty had previously served as a soldier before retiring and becoming a bus driver. On the surface, his life seemed ordinary, with a long-term relationship and a daughter. However, everything was about to change as his past crimes finally caught up with him. Following the confirmation of his DNA, Doherty was promptly arrested and later convicted on June 17, 2014, after a 52-day trial. Leading the prosecution was John Scodian. The authorities were able to gather enough evidence based on the extent and location of the Lane's injuries. It was deduced that she had been forcefully grabbed by the hair, struck on the head, and dragged into the lane where she was assaulted and ultimately found. The presence of Doherty's DNA at the crime scene further supported the claim that he had been with her that fateful night. The prosecution painted a vivid picture for the jury, reconstructing the events of the incident through a compelling narrative. They alleged that Doherty had caught Elaine off guard, forcibly removed her clothing, and then strangled her from behind with a ligature while she lay face down on the ground. Fortunately, the police were able to locate a witness named Martin Brown, who came forward to testify and provide additional credibility to their case. According to Brown, he had allegedly witnessed Doherty following Elaine into the lane, appearing angry as he trailed behind her. John Doherty refuted all of these allegations and enlisted the services of QC Donald Femmel to mount his defense. Femmel skillfully presented a counterargument against the DNA evidence, asserting that it was insufficient and should not be deemed a reliable source of proof. He contended that due to the evidence being stored away for more than 2 decades, there was a high possibility of contamination or tampering. The defense's argument held weight considering the numerous errors committed during the handling of Elaine's case. Not only was there a lack of proper forensic equipment and knowledge on how to handle a crime scene at the time of the incident, but it was later discovered that the officers had also failed to wear protective gear while collecting evidence. Furthermore, the credibility of the witness testimony was called into question. Martin Brown, the eyewitness in question, was colorblind when he was asked to examine black and white photographs of individuals resembling the perpetrator. He was able to eliminate all but 3 individuals, initially identifying someone else in his statement before eventually naming John Doherty. Brown's credibility was further undermined when he revealed that it took him a decade to come forward because he had only recently recognized Elaine's face in a newspaper and realized that she was the same woman he had seen on the night of the incident. The defense argued that it was unjust to blame Doherty, as the news of a contaminated crime scene had not been disclosed prior to the trial. They claimed that the officers handling the case were negligent and could have mishandled the DNA sample, leading to a match with Doherty due to contamination. However, their argument was swiftly dismissed when the forensic scientists responsible for the crime scene testified that it was 560,000 times more likely for the DNA found at the scene to belong to Doherty than any other unrelated male. Despite the counterarguments, the jury ultimately sided with the prosecution, resulting in John Doherty being declared guilty by a majority verdict. This case became one of the longest-running cases in Scotland, with the culprit being apprehended after nearly 3 decades thanks to DNA evidence. In 2014, Doherty was finally convicted in a high court in Edinburgh and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 21 years by Lord Advocate Frank Mulholland. Mulholland justified the severity of the sentence by emphasizing the brutality of the crime. Elaine Doyle, who was simply walking home that night when she became a victim of this heinous crime, had her brother John Doyle expressed his belief that the sentencing was appropriate and just. He further clarified that despite the lengthy process of obtaining justice for his sister, they found solace in the fact that she could finally find peace. On behalf of his mother, he acknowledged that the pain of losing a loved one never truly fades, but the resolution of the case provided a glimmer of hope amidst their sorrow. The family expressed gratitude for the apprehension of the perpetrator, as it brought a sense of closure. However, their grief was compounded when John Doyle's 17-year-old son Jack was tragically stabbed to death in Greenock in 2012. John's father, also named Jack, was unable to bear the loss and subsequently passed away, adding to John's immense devastation. Despite the overwhelming sorrow he had to endure, he remained thankful that at least one of the culprits was apprehended and brought to justice. Let's travel back to Tulsa, Oklahoma, on October 22, 1984, when the city was left baffled as 18-year-old Annette Craver disappeared without a trace. The police searched the area in an effort to find the truth, but they were unsuccessful, and the teenage married girl's whereabouts remained a sinister mystery. Despite the fact that her disappearance remains a mystery, the police were concerned that it might actually have been a horrifying homicide. It turned out that this situation was much more complicated than it seemed. In the long run for justice, a man was found at the center of it all, and for an incredible 54 years, his perverted viewpoint would prevail over the pursuit of justice before justice finally prevailed. What might have happened to Annette, a young, beautiful teenage girl? Why did it take so long to solve the mystery of this chilling case? Who was this maniac that took her away? Hello and welcome back to Mystery Detective, where we explore dark and sinister stories around the world. Stay with us as we walk you through this 54 years mystery and 2 other eerie mysteries that are closely related to this terrifying case. Tulsa, a city in Oklahoma, is captivating with a distinctive fusion of tradition and modernity. This city, which is tucked away in the middle of America, offers a vibrant way of life that is enriched by its varied cultural scene. Tulsa is renowned for its exquisite architecture, well-preserved art installations, vibrant performing arts community, and succulent barbecue restaurants. The city is also well known for its long history of oil production and for being the birthplace of the famous Route 66. Tulsa has battled crime despite its accomplishments. The city's violent crime rate exceeded the national average in 2020, making it one of the most dangerous cities in the country. Further emphasizing the negative aspects of the city, Tulsa also saw the mysterious disappearance of Annette Craver. Annette Michelle Craver was born on December 7, 1965, in Houston, Texas, but little is known about her early life. In 1979, when her father tragically died in a car accident, things took a significant turn. The heartbreaking incident had a negative impact on Annette's emotional health. Annette's mother, Mary Rose, observed a noticeable shift in her daughter's behavior, noting that she became more reclusive and frequently turned to solitude for comfort. Annette was by herself a lot of the time. She was constantly creating art and writing poetry. She would also occasionally pick up a guitar. Mary was aware, deep down, that her cherished daughter had been experiencing great hardships as a result of her father's passing. A significant event took place on September 8, 1981, when Mary organized a yard sale in Houston to sell her late husband's possessions. 15-year-old Annette actively helped her mother sell off her father's possessions. Despite her lack of expression, it was clear that Annette had not yet recovered from the devastating loss of her father. Mary worried about Annette's isolation and loneliness, but she was unaware that Annette wasn't actually feeling lonely. Unknown to Mary, Annette had been involved with a charming man who had a sizable age difference. In addition to being older than Annette, the man was even older than Annette's mother. Mary's first encounter with Annette's friend, 40-year-old Felix Vale, occurred at the yard sale. Mary didn't suspect anything and never entertained the thought that there might be more going on. As Felix approached Annette to talk, Mary noticed the obvious age gap. Mary struggled with the burden of financial difficulties following the death of her husband. After finding it difficult to find employment in Houston, she considered moving away in search of work and better opportunities to give her daughter a better life. Mary overcame a number of obstacles and was rewarded for her perseverance when she received a job offer in Oklahoma. But there was still a lot to worry about. Annette, who had already missed 2 academic years, was about to receive her high school diploma. Mary was aware that her daughter's academic progress might be jeopardized by a sudden move to another state. When faced with this decision, Mary went with her plan of action. She asked a friend for help in taking care of Annette, while she relocated to Oklahoma in search of employment. Although the plan seemed good at first, it soon started to fall apart for Mary. As time went on, a growing worry became apparent. The bond between Annette and Felix appeared to have grown stronger while she was away. As she watched the 40-year-old man become more involved in her daughter's life, Mary couldn't help but feel uneasy. This was a circumstance that greatly disturbed her. After Annette graduated from high school, Mary was able to buy a new home thanks to her diligent saving. She registered the house under both of their names with the hope of reuniting their lives and living together once again. Mary's thoughts of a long-awaited reunion were dashed after she learned that Annette had left when she got back to Houston. Mary discovered that after Annette graduated high school, Felix immediately suggested a road trip to her. Captivated by his charm, she happily accepted his offer. Over the course of 1983, Mary did occasionally get letters from Annette, each coming from a different place. Then one day, a call from her daughter, who was at the time living in California, arrived. Hearing from Annette gave Mary a rush of happiness, but the conversation quickly became concerning. Annette, who was only 17 years old at the time, asked her mother for permission before she married Felix Vale. Annette seemed to have already made up her mind, despite Mary telling her daughter it would be a mistake to marry Felix, advising her to wait until she was at least 18 years old. Annette allegedly declared her love for Felix Vale and intended to wed him in Mexico. Mary struggled with a difficult decision, knowing that she might lose her daughter who was very involved with Felix. She was aware that refusing a daughter she hadn't seen in a while could have its own effects. She consequently gave the marriage her approval with a heavy heart, believing her daughter to have good judgment and not realizing Felix was a bad man. But the perfect married life Annette had pictured would soon start to fall apart. Annette opened up to her mother in letters written shortly after their wedding. She revealed that Felix had changed unsettlingly, becoming more and more domineering. She shockingly revealed that Felix had even forced her to have an unauthorized abortion after learning she was pregnant with his child. Mary begged Annette to come home right away, consumed with worry for her daughter's safety. Annette eventually mustered the strength to escape Felix's grip in 1984 and made her way back to her mother. However, when Mary finally caught a glimpse of her daughter, she couldn't help but notice that she had changed. Annette had lost her identity. She was constantly perplexed by everything. Mary believed that her daughter was simply overwhelmed by Felix's attempts to manipulate and control her life. Mary found comfort in being reunited with her daughter amidst the changes. But this joy was short-lived. They were unhappy not long after Annette returned. Felix began tormenting their home with relentless phone calls and his insistence on speaking to Annette. Mary was unmoved and maintained her position, determined to defend her daughter at all costs. However, things got worse in October 1984. When Felix was able to breach Mary's house's perimeter, boldly entering without permission and making his way up to Annette's room, the two spent some time talking privately in Annette's room. When they eventually came out to Mary, they would say something that would break her heart. Mary was sternly instructed to leave the house by them. Mary tried to patch things up with Annette, despite her heartbreak, but her efforts were in vain. Annette remained controlled under Felix's sway and was unresponsive to any opposing viewpoint. Mary gave up her share of the home as a result, packed her belongings, and moved to California with a heavy heart. The nightmare did not end there, though. When Annette turned 18 years old, she made a big decision by claiming the inheritance her late father had left for her. Surprisingly, she allegedly transferred all the money into Felix's account and gave him legal ownership to her home. Mary attempted to contact her daughter after learning of this worrying development, but for some reason she was unable to reach her. She then wasted no time and contacted Felix right away. Felix asserted that Annette had requested going to Mexico on her own and that he had put her on a bus. On October 22, 1984, Mary immediately called the police and reported her daughter missing. Following receipt of the missing person report, the Tulsa police moved quickly to speak with Felix Vale in an effort to gather any information they could. Unfortunately, the police were also manipulated by Felix, just like Annette. Mary had a strong hunch that Felix was concealing the truth and had a significant role in Annette's disappearance. Despite her convictions, the police were persuaded by Felix's remarks and gave up looking for Annette Craver. Felix was successful in persuading the authorities that Annette had left alone on her own volition. Mary was left feeling helpless and clinging to the steadfast hope that her daughter would one day return after being repeatedly ignored by law enforcement regarding her daughter's disappearance. She sat by the phone for years, hoping Annette would call to say hi on special occasions like her birthday and Mother's Day, but sadly nothing ever happened. By 1991, a startling 7 years had passed without a significant development in the search for Annette Craver. Mary wrote hundreds of letters in an effort to contact the police, but neither they nor the FBI were interested in getting back to her. Even Felix didn't respond to the letter she sent him. Mary had the sobering insight that depending on others would be fruitless. She made the decision to conduct an independent investigation. Due to her tenacity, Mary initially tried to learn more about Felix using the developing internet's resources, because she was convinced he held the key to Annette's disappearance. However, there wasn't a lot of online information available in the 1990s. Mary's unwavering diligence allowed her to track down a single but crucial lead, which was Sue Jordan, Felix's sister. Mary traveled halfway across the country to meet her, spurred on by hope and the potential for learning crucial information. Mary was informed by Sue Jordan that Felix had a wife who had drowned. With the help of this promising information, Mary was able to locate Mary Horton Vale's family in Louisiana in 1993. Mary Horton Vale was Felix's first wife. Her efforts paid off when she was able to track down Mary Horton's brother, Will Horton, who had only been 15 when his sister tragically drowned in the Calcasieu River. Will Horton described his sister with a warm heart during Mary's encounter with him. He said, "My sister was so very special, so thoughtful and kind." He spoke of her with fondness. Felix Vale, his brother-in-law, was not accorded the same sentiment, though. Will Horton revealed that his family had a clear grudge against Felix. Mary Elizabeth Horton Vale's ancestry can be found in Louisiana, where she was born on February 16, 1940. She assumed the position of editor for the school newspaper. She was also named the Eunice High School Homecoming Queen. When she was attending McNeese State College in 1960, to further her education, her path crossed with Felix's. Amazingly, the two exchanged wedding vows just 6 months after they first met. In 1961, their union produced a Bill Vale, their son, was welcomed into the world by Mary. Felix, however, acted otherwise. With the birth of their child, Felix's attitude changed noticeably. He began to treat his first wife with a controlling attitude, much like he did with Annette later. He even threatened her, telling her what would happen if she got pregnant again. Mary Elizabeth Horton Vale became pregnant once more the following year, despite Felix's warning. Felix was enraged by the news, driving her to seek safety from his fury. She and her son Bill fled to her mother's house out of fear of his wrath. Mary Horton considered divorcing Felix, but her mother advised her to go back and try to make amends with him. Mary's life tragically ended before they could settle anything. On October 28, 1962, Mary Horton and Felix Vale went fishing along the Calcasieu River. In an unfortunate turn of events, Mary drowned to death. Felix described what happened when he was questioned by the police. According to him, Mary allegedly drowned after she unintentionally fell off the boat. The Horton family remained dubious of this account and found it difficult to believe. Felix quickly rose as a top suspect in the investigation. As a result of the murky circumstances surrounding Mary's drowning, she was found dead in a place that was unsuitable for fishing. After being found 2 days later, her body underwent an autopsy, which turned up red flags. Mary had bruises on her neck, right calf, and left leg, which suggested that she may have fought before being forced into the water. Authorities discovered a scarf that had been wrapped around her neck and put in her mouth, suggesting traumatic asphyxia, a type of suffocation. This discovery provided additional damning evidence. The detectives were confident Felix was the murderer in light of the mounting evidence, but the coroner had a completely different take. He thought the evidence was insufficient to convict Felix. Felix also vehemently denied being guilty. He was released in January 1963 after a Calcasieu Parish grand jury declined to indict him. At the time, Mary Horton's family was devastated and felt cheated by Felix's release. Mary Rose, Annette's mother, was more enraged by what she had heard as Will Horton broke down, relaying this tragic information. Will described how the loss of his sister devastated their mother and left a void in his heart that would never be filled. At that point, Mary Rose's pursuit of justice included a steadfast search for justice on behalf of Will's sister, Mary Horton, in addition to her daughter. Though before the two women could receive justice and the police could be fully involved, Mary Rose understood the need for more concrete evidence than just statements. Thankfully, she was no longer fighting for justice by herself. Will Horton tells Mary that since 1975, he has been getting calls from people asking about a girl who vanished in Sulphur in 1973. The fact that the girl in question was Sharon Hensley, Felix's ex-girlfriend after Mary Horton, added to the unsettling nature of the situation. Sharon Hensley's mother called for years to inquire as to whether Sharon had been seen. Mary Rose began a new journey in her search for knowledge. She soon understood that her daughter was not Felix's only victim. In 1994, she made her way to Bismarck, North Dakota to meet with Sharon Hensley's brother, Brian. Brian characterized his sister as independent. In the summer of 1970, Sharon Hensley, who was born on December 20th, 1948, left her home in Bismarck, North Dakota. She aimed to welcome a new beginning in her life as she joined other free-spirited people who were forging their journey in the wake of the renowned Summer of Love. Sharon Hensley's ultimate destination was San Francisco. She was able to accomplish her objective, but the reality that met her was a far cry from the idyllic life she had imagined in her North Dakota sanctuary. Her path instead took her to Felix Vale. Felix, at that time, adopted an unconventional lifestyle and embraced a nomadic existence after the death of his first wife. During this stage, he even assumed the persona of a traveling preacher and founded his own personal cult group called the Holy Order of Mans. During this time, Sharon Hensley, then age 21, met Felix. In 1972, 2 years after leaving, Sharon visited her parents' house in Bismarck with her new boyfriend, Felix Vale. But their daughter had undergone a change. The once vivacious North Dakotan girl who loved to dance and hang out with her friends now seemed distant. Her parents were worried that her independence was being supplanted by the influence of her new boyfriend. Her parents were uncomfortable after the meeting, but Sharon, who was an adult, decided to leave with Felix. She had the freedom to choose her own course of action. Nevertheless, her parents' concerns grew more serious. They believed Felix was exposing their daughter to a dangerous lifestyle, one characterized by drug use and irresponsible conduct. But not even they could have predicted what lay in store for the future. In a short period of time, Sharon joined Felix's cult group and interacted with them. Her involvement, though, came at the same time as the dramatic change in their relationship. At the time, Felix's drug use increased and his behavior changed, becoming more violent and domineering. During those times, Sharon's family thought she was with him out of fear. She had no idea how to escape the predicament. Along with Felix, Sharon was about to travel to South America. But before beginning this journey, she called her mother one last time to say goodbye. Her mother sensed something was wrong, though she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Her maternal instincts were spot on, because after that final communication, Sharon stopped calling or writing. She disappeared with no trace. In a letter to Sharon's family in 1973, Felix claimed that he had last seen Sharon in Key West. His story was that she had left him and gone sailing around the world with an Australian couple. The Hensley family, however, had skepticism about everything Felix said, as was a common theme in all of these cases. In February 1973, Sharon's family reported her missing, but regrettably the police did nothing for a full year. A dated newspaper report filled the gap even though there were immediate investigations or initial police support. The story from the old newspaper caught Brian Hensley's attention. The news report from 1970 mentioned Sharon and Felix's arrest. According to the report, a young boy of about 8 years old showed up at the police station and asked for help to go back home. Bill Vale, the son of Mary Horton and Felix Vale, was revealed to be the child. Bill, an 8-year-old boy, went to the police station without shoes or socks and complained that his father was forcing him to smoke marijuana and that he wanted to return home. The Horton family was unaware that Felix had taken Bill with him when he left for California following Mary Horton's passing. Bill was compelled to follow his troubled father wherever he went from that point on. Additionally, the police discovered that Bill had a history of violence. The police also discovered that Bill had experienced abuse during this time before escaping and making his way to the police station. Felix and Sharon were detained for endangering a child. However, it is unknown how the two managed to escape the police custody. When Mary Rose heard about all of these things from Sharon's brother, she made the decision to meet Bill Vale. She thought Bill might be a source of vital information because he had valuable knowledge about where Felix was. With this goal in mind, Mary set out for Kansas to meet with Bill and his family. Mary Rose said Bill was very honest. He treated her with a lot of kindness and sympathy. Mary observed that despite being a good man, he was terrified of his father. Bill was initially apprehensive to share much information, for fear that doing so might unintentionally bring Felix closer to his own wife and kids, but his desire to help Mary and obtain justice for his mother won. Bill made the decision to seize this opportunity after realizing its importance. He gathered the courage to divulge the dark secrets that might support Mary's claims. Bill described an important event that happened in 1970, just before he fled and arrived at the police station. He had unintentionally overheard his father, Felix, and Sharon talking to each other. Bill claimed that Felix admitted to Sharon that he had killed Mary Horton, his mother. Bill sought refuge with his grandparents after Sharon and Felix were detained in 1970, which resulted in a significant change in his life. Despite this alteration, he continued to be afraid of his father, especially since he was required to testify against him in court throughout the trials. This fear of his father's return increased his anxiety, and tragically Felix did return in 1975. Felix arrived at Bill's grandparents' house and asked to see his son. The fact that Sharon was no longer with Felix added to Bill's fear, which was already strong. When Bill inquired about Sharon, Felix responded that Sharon would never bother anyone again. Bill, who was only 13 years old, understood what he meant, but he had no way to put that knowledge to use. At the time, he was unable to speak to anyone about his father's sinister behavior. Bill struggled with the worry that if he shared these revelations, Felix might hurt his family. His desire for justice was stronger. Sadly, Bill's battle with cancer claimed his life in 2009, preventing him from seeing his mother's justice served. Bill, however, made sure to meticulously document his account of Felix's confession before he passed away. He asked the local preacher to write down his story so that the truth would be preserved for future generations. After a while, Mary Rose felt she had something important enough to ask the FBI to reopen the case. Although she was aware that there was no physical proof, she clung to the belief that the testimony of the Hortons, Sharon's brother, Felix's son, Bill, and herself could possibly give her the evidence she needed to pursue justice for her daughter. Mary had the opportunity to speak with a special FBI agent who dealt with cold cases and serial killers. He accepted Mary's account and determined Felix was a serial killer. Tragically, the cold case department took the brunt of the budget cuts, and the agent who had demonstrated support for Mary's cause was let go. Due to this unfortunate turn of events, Mary's quest for justice had no way to be furthered. She awoke to find herself exactly where she had started. Mary felt guilty for having inspired all the families to pursue justice. The families who trusted her, though, knew she wouldn't give up. Even though the conversation fizzled, Mary kept looking for someone to assess their situation. She simply felt a strong desire to put Felix behind bars. Over the course of nearly 30 years, Mary had been gradually worn down as a result of her resolve to fight for justice. While listening to the radio in June 2011, Mary heard about a detective who had solved 8 murder cases involving the infamous Burning Mississippi murders, which were carried out by the Ku Klux Klan. Before he cracked them, these cases had remained unsolved for 50 years. The knowledge of this gave Mary the additional push she required. Mary immediately set out on a quest to find the investigator's contact information. Fortunately, she was able to find his phone number. Jerry Mitchell, a resident of Mississippi, was this person. Mary informed Jerry Mitchell about the cases and soon learned that Felix Vale had moved to Mississippi. As a result of this realization, Mary was faced with a decision she had to make. Mary Rose and Jerry Mitchell traveled through Mississippi in 2011 in order to reach the crucial spot where the criminal was. They arrived at a remote and desolate trailer park. Jerry wondered if Felix was watching them as they highlighted from their vehicle, but Mary didn't seem to care. She merely wished to put an end to Felix Vale's chapter. They noticed a broken window as they neared the trailer house. Mary crept through the window to enter the room in search of the truth without thinking twice about the danger. Jerry couldn't believe his eyes when she started throwing out machetes a short while later. Mary Rose and Jerry saw someone rushing in their direction as they looked around the house. But it wasn't Felix Vale. Rather was K.A. Faulkner, his sister, who appeared to be upset at their sudden intrusion. However, when Kay found out why Mary and Jerry were there, her initial anger at their unforeseen presence quickly subsided. When Kay Faulkner was spoken to, she admitted that she thought her brother had murdered those women. Only one day into the investigation, Jerry Mitchell recognized the quick progress made and seized the opportunity. He started by speaking right away with Mary Rose, the Hensleys, and the Hortons. As a result of these testimonies from the victim's family, in 2015, the book titled Gone was published. This book painstakingly documented the family's experiences. It received numerous awards and a great deal of immediate acclaim. The FBI became aware of this book, and after carefully considering all the relevant information, they decided to reopen the investigation. Mary, who had struggled for a long time, at last felt true happiness. Mary Horton's case was given priority by the FBI after a careful review of all the information that was available, primarily because her death had been officially declared, unlike that of Sharon and Annette, whose bodies had never been found. The problem was that this case had been going on for more than 50 years, which had led to reports and data being lost over time. The FBI persisted in their search for a district attorney who would be willing to take on this challenging old case, and they eventually found the right candidate, Hugh Holland. After reviewing the case, Hugh Holland didn't waste any time in sending out a squad to raid Felix's house. Authorities discovered Felix Vale's nearly 2,500-page journal. They learned from reading the journals that Felix made a conscious effort to dominate every woman in his life, frequently using physical force. Felix wrote about how he even enjoyed drinking raw blood in the journals, but there was nothing pertaining to the killings. Since Mary Horton drowned in the Cokesia River in 1962, Holland and his team decided to find someone who might have any information regarding the incident. Surprisingly, they discovered a man named Ike Absker, who was 90 years old. Felix Vale and Ike Absker shared a room when Felix Vale lived in Lake Charles. Ironically, Ike's father had a lot of boats and was a member of the search team that the sheriff's office hired to look for Mary Horton's body. Ike was on board in his father's boat when Mary's body was found. As they were talking during their meeting, Ike Absker, who was in a wheelchair, handed Hugh Holland an envelope with the word "keep" written on it. When Holland opened the envelope, he took 2 pictures out, and they turned out to be pictures of Mary Horton's body on the day it was discovered, showing severe bruising and wounds. When Holland finally came to the realization, he grabbed the photos and started his examination. Holland was working on the case in his office when a pathologist happened to walk by. "Who murdered her?" the pathologist said as he bowed down to look at the pictures. That was sufficient evidence and confirmation for Holland to declare Mary Horton's case to be a homicide. Now armed with sufficient proof and strong evidence, Holland quickly filed charges against 76-year-old Felix Vale for the murder of his first wife, Mary Horton. In a fitting turn of events, Louisiana, the very location where the case had started, became the location where it finally came to an end. 2014 served as the year of judgment when Felix Vale was captured and taken into custody. The disappearances of Sharon and Annette were also brought up during the trial. After all, Felix Vale was the last person to see them both. Holland asked Ike Absker to testify because he understood how important his testimony was to the case and that it will be the most important piece of evidence used throughout the entire trial. Ike Absker died at his home on May 17, 2014 from old age, nearly 3 months after giving his testimony. However, during the court proceedings, his testimony proved to be the deciding factor that all doubts were dispelled. The jury only needed about 10 minutes to reach a conclusion. Felix Vale received a life sentence after being found guilty. When Felix was found guilty, Mary Rose, Brian Hensley, and Will Horton, who were among the audience, breathed a sigh of relief. Mary and Brian were relieved that Felix was held accountable for his actions, finally receiving the punishment he deserved, even though his involvement in Annette's and Sharon's disappearance could not be proved. Brian Hensley was finally able to hold a memorial for his sister after the verdict. It makes no difference to the victim's family whether Felix was found guilty of killing just Mary Horton or all 3 women. What matters is that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. After Felix was taken into custody, justice was served, and Mary Rose's tenacious pursuit was rewarded. However, the emotional scar on her heart never fully healed, serving as a constant reminder of the agonizing pain she had experienced. Writing letters as if they were meant for Annette to read helped Mary cope with her lingering guilt over abandoning her daughter because of work. And she did so in the hopes that one day she would be able to move past it and eventually forgive herself. Nestled in the heart of Texas, Beaumont is a vibrant city that possesses its own unique charm. Situated along the banks of the powerful Neches River, this city is home to a diverse population and exudes energy and intrigue. With a population of over 118,000 residents, Beaumont strikes a perfect balance between a close-knit community and the bustling atmosphere of urban life. The streets tell a story of history, adorned with magnificent architecture that adds to the city's character. Beaumont's cultural heritage runs deep, resonating through its art, music, and culinary offerings. However, amidst the vibrancy of the city, a chilling tale unfolded involving a woman named Mary Edwards. Mary Catherine Edwards, a name that echoed through the halls of Price Elementary School, was more than just a teacher. Born on July 9, 1963, to Mary and Edwards and Alum Caswell Edwards, her journey began in a different era, in a world that eagerly awaited her arrival. From a young age, Mary displayed an exceptional intellect and a passion for nurturing young minds, leading her to pursue a career in education. In 1992, she became a teacher at Price Elementary School in Beaumont, Texas. Her positive presence and enthusiastic approach engaged her students, leaving a lasting impact on their lives and encouraging them to embrace the joy of learning. Beyond her professional life, Mary's personal story unfolded within the close-knit community of Beaumont. Despite her independent spirit, She cherished the bonds of family and friendship. Residing in her new townhouse on Park Meadow Street, Mary embraced the solitude and freedom it provided. Her house became a gathering place for her large circle of friends where playful banter filled the air. The second week of January 1995 seemed like any other for Mary Catherine Edwards, ordinary and uneventful. The days followed a familiar rhythm, seamlessly blending into one another. She fulfilled her duties by nurturing the minds of young students and then sought solace in the comfort of her home. On that unfortunate Friday, January 13, 1995, as the evening settled over Beaumont, followed her usual routine. She took her beloved dog for a walk and eventually returned to her townhouse. With a glass of wine in hand during a phone call with her devoted boyfriend, little did they know that it would be their final conversation with Mary Catherine Edwards. The next day, Mary's parents attempted to contact her but received no response. With each unanswered call, their concern and anxiety grew. Unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, they made the decision to visit Mary's home. Nervously they entered, their hearts pounding in their chests, unaware of the horrifying discovery that awaited them. In the silence of the bathroom, they found Mary Catherine Edwards lifeless, drowned in the bathtub before them. Her hands were bound with handcuffs, and her life had been cruelly taken away. As the reality of the situation sank in, despair tightened its grip on their hearts. Mary had not only suffered a terrible assault, but her very existence had been stolen from her. The investigation into the case of Mary Catherine Edwards began with great determination. The detectives meticulously searched the crime scene, hoping to find any clues that could lead them to the truth. They meticulously combed through every inch of her bedroom, carefully collecting and analyzing items. The results of the autopsy played a crucial role in uncovering the facts. The medical examiner examined Mary's body and discovered foreign DNA, providing a valuable lead for the investigators. As the evidence, both physical and testimonial, started to come together, a clearer picture emerged, hinting at who might be responsible for the crime. The investigators tirelessly pursued every lead, leaving no stone unturned. After interviewing numerous individuals, ranging from eyewitnesses to Mary's colleagues and close acquaintances, the investigators aimed to gather all available information to reconstruct the events surrounding her death. Despite their exhaustive efforts, the case eventually reached a dead end. The leads they once pursued with optimism began to fade, enveloping them in a frustrating silence. One detective, emotionally connected to the case through a close friend, experienced vivid dreams related to Mary's demise. In these dreams, he witnessed the autopsy and envisioned Mary reaching out to him, seemingly eager to disclose her assailant's identity. However, each dream concluded abruptly, leaving him with more uncertainties than resolutions. Driven by an unwavering commitment to uncover the truth, his distinctive perspective and emotional investment prompted the investigators to seek his counsel. Mary Catherine Edwards' tragic passing deeply impacted all those touched by her narrative, fostering a collective resolve to bring closure to her case and rekindling hopes for justice to prevail. Despite persistent endeavors, the leads gradually dwindled, leading the investigation to a standstill. The case grew cold, devoid of any significant breakthroughs or fresh leads to pursue. As time passed, the memory of Mary Catherine Edwards' tragic story lingered in the hearts of those who knew her and the community she had touched. It was a case of personal significance for many, including Bob Wortham, the district attorney of Jefferson County. Several individuals in his office shared personal ties with Mary, either through their children, who were her students, or due to their shared church affiliation. This renewed personal connection fueled a fresh determination to seek justice. In 2020, the Texas Rangers, under the leadership of Brandon Bess, stepped up to reignite the investigation. Aaron and Tina Loallen, along with their partners, embarked on an exhaustive journey to meticulously reevaluate every aspect of the case. Their objective was to gather all the scattered pieces of evidence, meticulously sifting through old files and eliminating any duplicates to ensure that no detail was overlooked. Once the foundation was laid, the team began exploring new avenues and possibilities. It was during this phase that they crossed paths with Othram Labs, a pioneering force in the field of DNA analysis. Despite not being well-versed in the intricacies of science, Brandon Bess recognized the immense potential that this technology held. He engaged in conversations with experts like Dr. David Middleman, the founder and CEO of Othram Labs, in order to grasp the significance and advantages of DNA analysis within the context of the investigation. The advancements in DNA technology played a pivotal role in cracking the case. DNA samples obtained from Mary's body were entered into a database, and authorities utilized family tree websites to search for potential matches. Finally, in 2020, breakthrough occurred when a match was found, linking the DNA to Clayton Foreman. This long-awaited breakthrough injected new life into the investigation and paved the way for justice to be served. Detective Aaron Llewellyn, who also served as a Federal Bureau of Investigation agent, played a crucial role in the case. Recognizing the need for additional support, Llewellyn reached out to his partners at the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Ohio. The team collaborated and coordinated their efforts to collect discarded DNA from the suspect, necessitating a trip to Ohio. After thorough preparations and discussions with their Ohio counterparts, the team successfully arranged for an interview with the suspect. Astonishingly, he agreed to speak with them. However, this encounter proved to be a turning point in the investigation. Following the interview, he was promptly arrested on a murder warrant issued in Texas. Finally, wheels of justice were set in motion. The significance of DNA evidence in this case cannot be overstated. DNA obtained from Clayton Foreman, discovered among discarded items, played a crucial role in solving the mystery. Clayton Bernard Foreman, a native of Franklin County, Ohio, born in 1961, was raised in a seemingly typical suburban environment. Despite his uneventful early years, darker aspects of his character began to surface over time. In 1981, Foreman's true nature was exposed when he committed a brutal crime, victimizing a former classmate. The details of the incident were chilling: a stranded woman at a gas station, a false claim of being a police officer, a ride home offered under false pretenses of safety. However, once inside the vehicle, Foreman's sinister intentions were revealed. He restrained her with a belt, brandished a knife, and subjected her to a horrific assault. Following the crime, Foreman faced charges and eventually pleaded guilty to the assault. Surprisingly, he received only probation as a sentence, leaving the possibility of future offenses open. Despite maintaining a facade of normalcy in the years that followed, Foreman's past continued to haunt him. In 1982, he married a woman who was acquainted with Mary Edwards, former friend and classmate from Forest Park High School. Mary had even been a bridesmaid at Foreman's first wedding. However, the marriage ended in divorce in 1993. Tragedy struck in 1995 when Mary Catherine Edwards was assaulted and murdered. While Foreman appeared to lead an ordinary life in the suburbs of Ohio, working in finance, he carried the burden of a dark secret and a potential link to a heinous crime. Despite his ability to blend in with society, Foreman remained connected to his past, actively involved in organizing high school reunions. He attended the most recent gathering in 2018. The news of his suspected involvement in the murder of Mary Edwards shook the community, challenging their beliefs and leaving them struggling to accept the reality. 61 years old Clayton Bernard Foreman from Reynoldsburg, Ohio, was apprehended in Franklin County, Ohio on April 26, 2021. He faced a charge of capital murder for the brutal attack and killing of 31-year-old Mary Catherine Edwards from Beaumont in 1995. After more than 26 years, a grand jury finally indicted Foreman for his atrocious actions. Following his arrest, Foreman appeared in the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas General Division on May 6, where he contested his extradition to Texas, the state where the charges originated. His next court appearance was set for June 3, 2021, and it was anticipated to involve testimony from Texas investigators. The legal process would then determine whether Foreman would be eligible for the death penalty. Currently, Foreman is detained without bond in the Franklin County Correction Center in Ohio, awaiting further legal proceedings. The prosecution, led by Patrick Knopf, will persist in constructing a case against him for the assault and murder of his former high school classmate, Mary Catherine Edwards, in 1995. The relentless pursuit of justice has brought closure to this long-standing case and provides a glimmer of hope for Mary's family and friends. Mary Catherine Edwards was remembered by friends, family, and former students as a kind-hearted and compassionate individual who left a positive impact on those around her. One of Mary's close friends expressed appreciation for Mary's kindness and encouragement, which helped her overcome her shyness and become more outgoing. She valued the nurturing environment that Mary created, allowing her to truly be herself. A former student was deeply saddened upon hearing about Mary's tragic demise. He recalled her as an authentically compassionate individual. The appalling specifics of the offense had a profound effect on him. The student conveyed his grief, underscoring the horrifying essence of the event, which struck a chord with others who knew Mary. These individual testimonies highlight the significant influence Mary Catherine Edwards had on her students and friends. The warmth, encouragement, and commitment she showed towards her students will be treasured and memorialized by those whose lives she impacted. On January 24, 1985, the lifeless body of a woman was discovered by a truck driver on Highway 78 in Olive Branch, Mississippi, near the Coldwater Bridge. The investigation conducted by the DeSoto County Sheriff's Office revealed that she had been strangled with a ligature. Notably, the woman was missing her shoes, undergarments, and jacket. Despite their efforts, the authorities were unable to identify her, classifying her as a Jane Doe. The DeSoto County Sheriff's Office described her as a female, weighing around 110 pounds, standing at a height of 5 feet 3 inches, and estimated her age to be between 20 and 35 years old. They also noted her distinctive features, including red to blonde hair, 3 small piercings in each ear, tattoos on the inside of both ankles, and a surgical scar on her left forearm. Unfortunately, no further details could be determined about her identity, and the case remained unsolved for nearly 4 decades. However, in 2022, a breakthrough occurred when Carla Davis, a philanthropist and Mississippi native, provided funding to the DeSoto County Sheriff's Office and the Mississippi Office of the State Medical Examiner. Their goal was to address the backlog of cold cases in Mississippi, including the unidentified woman's case. They decided to send forensic evidence to Othram, a forensic laboratory, in hopes of finding a match for the remains. Additionally, the sheriff's office thoroughly investigated leads from individuals who believed the Jane Doe could be their missing relative. These leads were meticulously examined and ruled out by the crime scene technician and evidence clerk of DeSoto County. Finally, in March 2024, Othram successfully matched the DNA of the unidentified woman's body. After nearly 40 years, her brother residing in California was contacted and informed of the discovery. The woman was finally identified as Lori Ann Mueller-Pennell, who was born on September 6, 1962 in Missouri. Tragically, she was only 23 years old when she met her untimely demise. Prior to her disappearance, Lori Ann had been seen at a truck stop in West Memphis, Arkansas. Her family had filed a missing persons report, but she was never located. In remembrance of Lori Ann, her remains were laid to rest at Blocker Cemetery in Olive Branch, with her gravestone bearing the name Jane Doe and the date her body was found, January 24, 1985. The DeSoto County Sheriff's Department has affirmed its commitment to tirelessly pursue the individuals responsible for the crime. In a press release, they stated, "We firmly believe that justice knows no bounds of time, and as such, we will persistently strive to identify the culprits and ensure they face the consequences of their deeds." The city of Jacksonville, Florida, known for its vast size and a population of approximately 971,319 as of 2020, holds the title of the most populous city in the state. Situated on the Atlantic coast, this vibrant city boasts a rich history, a bustling port, and a variety of recreational and historical sites that shape the lives of its residents. With its diverse community, Jacksonville offers a dynamic cultural scene, including numerous parks, museums, and beaches, providing a perfect blend of leisure and opportunities for historical exploration. However, it is important to acknowledge the city's crime rate, which surpasses the national average by 17%, presenting its own set of challenges. Against this backdrop, the Kamaya Mowgli case emerged as a significant event in the city's recent history. On July 10, 1998, a day that was meant to be filled with joy and new beginnings turned into a day of profound sorrow for Shannara Mobley. At the tender age of 16, she welcomed her daughter, Kamaya, into the world at University Medical Center in Jacksonville, Florida at approximately 6:55 a.m. However, just 8 hours after the birth, tragedy struck. A nurse, who had been providing support and engaging in conversations with Shannara and Kamaya, suddenly became a part of a horrifying nightmare. Despite the nurse's initial assistance and the trust she had built with Shannara, she ultimately played a role in the abduction. In the later part of the afternoon, when Shannara was feeling exhausted and vulnerable, the nurse proposed the idea of placing Kamaya in her baby carrier for a routine temperature check. This suggestion seemed normal, nothing out of the ordinary, especially when Kamaya's grandmother entered the room and briefly interacted with the little one before the nurse took her away, assuring a swift return. However, as time passed and 20 minutes turned into an eternity, panic began to consume Shannara. Overwhelmed with a sense of dread, she embarked on a desperate search throughout the hospital corridors, her fear as a mother intensifying into sheer terror. The hospital, upon realizing the unthinkable reality of an abduction, promptly contacted the police, initiating an extensive search operation. Later, surveillance footage revealed a woman, who appeared to be just another family member according to the hospital staff, leaving with Kamaya unnoticed. This woman, dressed in a blue smock adorned with flowered green scrubs and surgical gloves, had successfully departed with Kamaya without arousing any suspicion. Police immediately launched a citywide search, implementing measures such as sealing off the hospital, halting buses, and notifying airports to be on high alert for the missing baby. Every nook and cranny of Jacksonville was meticulously scrutinized, from trains to hospital rooms, while helicopters scoured the area from above. Despite these concerted efforts, Kamaya remained elusive. The suspect, as described by both surveillance footage and eyewitness accounts, was believed to be an African-American woman in her early 30s, potentially wearing a wig with shoulder-length dark brown hair. It was theorized that she may have recently experienced the loss of a child or was feigning pregnancy. The police diligently pursued numerous leads, sought public assistance, and maintained hope, relying on statistics that indicated a favorable chance of recovering abducted infants. Kamaya's family endured endless weeks of uncertainty, desperate for any news about her whereabouts and the mysterious woman who had taken her. Without any pre-abduction photos of Kamaya, authorities had to rely on a composite sketch to help identify her, appealing to the public for any information that could bring her back safely. Despite the detectives' optimism and the usual success rate in similar cases, Kamaya remained missing, leaving everyone involved with haunting questions about her well-being and the motives of the woman who had snatched her away. The investigation into Kamaya Mobley's disappearance took a complicated turn, with suspicion falling on various individuals. Craig Aiken, Kamaya's father, found himself at the center of the storm, despite being in prison when his daughter was born and taken. The intricacies of his relationship with Shannara Mobley, coupled with their significant age difference, and the circumstances surrounding Kamaya's birth added layers of complexity to an already convoluted case. Even though Craig was physically absent, his determination to uncover the truth about his daughter's disappearance matched Shannara's. As the days passed with no sign of Kamaya, suspicions shifted unpredictably. Shannara, a young mother of 16, faced intense scrutiny from law enforcement, the community, and those closest to her. The unsettling possibility that she might have played a role in her own daughter's vanishing was exacerbated by Craig's legal issues, which seemed to overshadow their situation. The investigation left no stone unturned, exploring every possible angle, including the unsettling theories that Craig had orchestrated the abduction from prison, or that Shannara and Craig had conspired together. The immense pressure on Shannara resulted in a heart-wrenching moment when she defended her innocence by reflecting on her decision to bring Kamaya into the world despite difficult circumstances. The suspicion even reached Shannara's mother, who was present during the abduction. The guilt and the need to find someone to blame overwhelmed the family, leading to fractures and accusations that only intensified the pain. Throughout the ordeal, Both the police and the public closely monitored the family, analyzing their every action and statement. As the investigation expanded, the authorities left no stone unturned, following up on leads, interviewing numerous individuals and circulating flyers with Kamaya's description and information about the suspect. The hospital where Kamaya was taken from offered a substantial reward of $250,000 in the hopes of obtaining information that could lead to her safe return. Despite these efforts, the case went cold, leaving Kamaya's whereabouts a mystery. The emotional toll on Shinera was immeasurable. She lived in a state of suspended grief, holding on to hope by celebrating Kamaya's birthday each year with a cake, symbolizing her enduring love and the desire for a reunion. The legal battle against the hospital for its security lapses ended in a financial settlement, but no amount could make up for the loss Shinera experienced. It took nearly 2 decades before the truth about Kamaya's fate was revealed, finally providing answers to the agonizing questions that tormented Shinera. In 2017, a stunning revelation emerged in Walterboro, South Carolina, unraveling the mystery of Kamaya Mobley's disappearance. An 18-year-old teenager named Alexis Monago faced a life-changing discovery as she prepared to start her journey into adulthood with her first job. Encountering a significant obstacle, the lack of necessary identification, and a social security number to proceed. Gloria Williams, who was known as Alexis Monago's mother, made a shocking confession that changed everything. She admitted to abducting Alexis from the hospital on the day she was born and raising her as her own child. This revelation caused immense emotional turmoil for Alexis. Despite the overwhelming truth, Alexis found herself torn between conflicting loyalties. She pleaded with Gloria to escape and live in secrecy to avoid the authorities. However, burdened by guilt, Gloria felt compelled to face the consequences of her actions. She couldn't bear the thought of leaving Alexis, the daughter she had raised for 18 years, regardless of their true relationship. Alexis, feeling torn and confused, confided in only one close friend, carrying the weight of this secret alone. Approximately a year and a half later, an anonymous tip to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children exposed the case. This led to Gloria's arrest at her residence in the early morning hours. Amidst the chaos, on January 12, 2017, the police received DNA confirmation that Alexis, now known as Kamaya Mobley, was the missing child who had been kidnapped 18 years ago. This breakthrough not only solved an 18-year-old mystery, but also unraveled a complex web of emotions, identities, and legal consequences. With her true heritage now known, Alexis, or Kamaya, was thrust into the national spotlight, becoming the living connection between a painful past and a hopeful future. Her life story is an extraordinary journey from abduction to discovery, and the intricate process of reuniting with her biological family. Born on July 10, 1998, to Shinera Mobley and Craig Akin, Kamaya Mobley was taken by Gloria Williams and raised as her own daughter, Alexis Monago, in Walterboro, South Carolina. In this tight-knit community, Alexis grew up as a typical young woman, excelling in school, attending church regularly, and sharing a strong bond with Gloria, whom she believed to be her mother. Alexis' upbringing consisted of ordinary activities, like cheering for her older brother at basketball games and pampering herself with Gloria, who provided her with love, care, and a stable home. However, beneath the nurturing environment, the truth about Alexis' true parentage remained a looming shadow, eventually coming to light in a revelation that would alter everything. The emotional journey that followed the discovery of her true identity was further complicated by the legal consequences faced by Gloria Williams. As Alexis grappled with the reality of her situation, authorities worked diligently to reunite her with her biological parents, Shinera and Craig. The process of reunion was filled with a mix of emotions, from Shinera's unimaginable joy and relief at finding her daughter alive to the complexities of building a relationship from scratch. Their initial meeting over FaceTime was a poignant moment characterized by mutual curiosity and an unexpected ease of communication, as if they were not strangers but a family separated only by circumstances. However, despite the initial warmth, challenges lay ahead. Shinera's disappointment upon learning that Alexis had not alerted the authorities upon discovering her abduction highlighted the intricate web of emotions and loyalties at play. Alexis's desire to continue being known as Alexis and her reluctance to see Gloria face severe punishment underscored the depth of their bond and the difficulty of navigating her newfound reality. For Shannara and Craig, the dream of a seamless reunion faced obstacles as they confronted Alexis's loyalty to the only mother she had ever known. Gloria Williams, born in 1965, found herself at a tumultuous point in her life around the time she abducted Kamaya Mobley. In 1998, Gloria, at the age of 33, went through a devastating miscarriage, a painful experience she chose to keep hidden. Despite not being pregnant, she exhibited symptoms of a phantom pregnancy, maintaining the illusion. During this time, her then-boyfriend Charles Manigault put immense pressure on her to have a child, which was intertwined with a history of physical abuse. Gloria believes that this abuse contributed to her miscarriage. The situation at home deteriorated to the point where Gloria's sons from a previous marriage were deemed unsafe and had to live with their father. Charles insisted on having a baby, believing it would stabilize their tumultuous relationship. Filled with a mix of despair and hope for change, Gloria went on autopilot and embarked on a 4-hour drive that led her to the hospital where Shannara Mobley was about to give birth. In Shannara's hospital room, found herself in a vulnerable moment as Shannara expressed her uncertainties about motherhood. These uncertainties resonated with Gloria's deep longing to fulfill Charles's desire for a child. This led Gloria to impersonate a nurse, abduct Kamaya, and create a narrative that would not be questioned by her family or Charles. Upon returning home with Kamaya, Gloria fabricated records and maintained this false reality for 18 years, despite the foundation being built on lies. However, contrary to her hopes, the arrival of Kamaya did not mend the fractures in Gloria's relationship with Charles. The act of abducting Kamaya became a turning point in Gloria's life, not for the reasons she had anticipated, but because it gave her the strength to leave the abusive relationship with Charles. This decision was not driven by the expected stability a child might bring, but by a newfound determination to provide a safer environment for Kamaya. Gloria Williams, after enduring a tumultuous period, managed to rebuild her life. She found solace in marrying a supportive and loving husband and eventually regained custody of her 2 sons. However, the long-standing mystery surrounding Kamaya Mobley's disappearance was finally resolved when Gloria was arrested on January 13, 2017, from her South Carolina home. The subsequent trial, which garnered national attention, commenced on February 12, 2018. Facing the possibility of life imprisonment, Gloria entered a guilty plea for kidnapping and interference with custody, accepting a plea deal that reduced her sentence to 22 years. Courtroom was a poignant display of emotions, with Shannara Mobley and Craig Akin, Kamaya's biological parents, seated prominently behind the prosecution, representing the years of pain they had endured. Kamaya, known as Alexis Manigault to the world, positioned herself away from both sides, grappling with the complex loyalties that had shaped her life. Throughout the trial, tears and heartbreak were prevalent, underscoring the profound impact of Gloria's actions on all those involved. Kamaya's decision not to testify highlighted the difficult position she found herself in. Despite recognizing Shannara as her birth mother and discovering a family she never knew, her bond with Gloria, the only mother she had known, remained strong. Gloria had provided her with love and a semblance of a normal life, complicating Kamaya's feelings towards her biological parents, who sought justice for the abduction that had torn their family apart. Shannara's testimony served as a poignant reminder of the joy and hope she had experienced upon becoming a mother, only to have it cruelly taken away. Craig, too, expressed the enduring pain of never having known his daughter, directing his anguish towards Gloria in the courtroom. The trial laid bare the deep wounds inflicted on both families, exacerbated by the continued connection between Kamaya and Gloria, which Shannara perceived as a betrayal. Gloria's testimony shed light on her state of mind during the abduction, describing herself as broken and desperate during that period. She detailed the pressures and mistreatment that led to the abduction of Kamaya in an attempt to repair her relationship with her abusive partner. Her apology to Shannara and Craig, while recognizing the pain she had caused, underscored the complexity of her feelings and actions. Ultimately, on June 8, 2018, Williams received an 18-year prison sentence, a ruling that impacted everyone involved. Kamaya's struggle with her identity and loyalty, the Mobley family's pursuit of justice, and Williams' admission of guilt portrayed a narrative of deep sorrow and the pursuit of closure. Following the trial, Kamaya grappled with her dual identity and the reality of her life story. Upon returning to Walterboro, her childhood home, she faced the challenge of reconciling her past with her future. The relationships between Kamaya, Shinera, and Williams remained strained, showcasing the enduring effects of Williams' actions across generations. In December 2018, Kamaya Mobley made a life-changing decision to relocate to Jacksonville, Florida, to be closer to her biological family. A move that was met with immense joy and public support, as evidenced by her father's proud announcement on social media. This relocation signified not only a shift in Camilla's living arrangements, but also a significant stride towards healing and establishing a bond with her biological parents. Despite the complexities and emotional turmoil that had characterized their interactions since her discovery and Gloria Williams' trial, Kamaya's adjustment to life in Jacksonville was not without its difficulties. The emotional strain of navigating relationships with both her biological family and the woman she had always known as her mother, Gloria, continued to be a source of tension and heartache. Shinera Mobley, Kamaya's biological mother, expressed feelings of having to compete with Gloria for Kamaya's affection, shedding light on the intricate dynamics at play. Shinera even questioned whether the reunion had caused more harm than good, given the emotional turmoil that it stirred at one point. Despite these challenges, Kamaya's commitment to forging a path forward was evident in her efforts to integrate into her new environment and the life milestones she achieved. By the age of 21, Kamaya had secured employment, obtained a legal government ID, and acquired her driver's license, achievements that marked her growing independence and her desire to move forward with her life. Importantly, when it came time to choose a legal name for her ID, Kamaya chose Kamaya Mobley, embracing her birth identity while navigating the complexities of her dual heritage. Kamaya's relationship with Gloria Williams, though complicated by the circumstances of her upbringing, remained a significant part of her life. She continued to visit Gloria in prison, maintaining a connection with the woman who had raised her. This ongoing relationship underscored Kamaya's struggle to balance her affection for Gloria with her growing connections to her biological family. On December 15, 2023, Williams made a significant move in her case by requesting a judge to dismiss her current judgment and sentence, marking her third plea for reconsideration. She claimed her defense was severely lacking, particularly highlighting that her legal team failed to explore her mental health issues, neglected to request a competency hearing, and did not prepare an adequate defense, leaving her with no choice but to accept a plea deal. As a result, Williams criticized her attorneys for not seeking a change of venue to ensure a fair trial. Her motion advocates for the right to retract her plea, undergo a new competency evaluation, and, if deemed competent, to restart the legal process. On January 17, 1968, tragedy struck when Ensign Andrew Lee Munns, a 24-year-old newly appointed payroll officer, mysteriously disappeared from the United States ship Cacapan, a refueling ship stationed at Subic Bay in the Philippines during the Vietnam War. The circumstances surrounding his disappearance were perplexing as he seemed to vanish into thin air. To make matters worse, authorities discovered that $8,600 was missing from the ship's safe, leading them to conclude that Munns had taken the money and fled. Despite the case being closed, Munns's family always harbored doubts about this conclusion, firmly believing that it was out of character for him to commit such an act. It wasn't until 3 decades later that the Naval Criminal Investigative Service Cold Case Squad reopened the case, unveiling a series of extraordinary events. As we delve deeper into this intriguing case, 2 crucial questions arise. What pivotal evidence was gathered to identify the perpetrator? And what could have been the motive behind this heinous act? Situated on Luzon's west coast, approximately 100 kilometers northwest of Manila Bay, Subic Bay served as a vital naval base and staging area for the United States during the Vietnam War. The United States ship Cacapan, a refueling ship, played a significant role in supporting United States military operations in the region. Unfortunately, numerous sailors went missing during this tumultuous period, largely due to the hazardous and challenging conditions of naval operations in the conflict. Subic Bay was no exception, and among those who disappeared was Ensign Andrew Lee Munns. Born on October 12, 1943, in Mount Lebanon, Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, Munns had a close-knit family. While details about his parents remain unknown, he had a beloved sister named Mary Lou Taylor and two brothers, Skip and Doug. Munns spent most of his early years in the wonderful community of Mount Lebanon, where he was a popular boy throughout his time in the local school system. However, in 10th grade, his family relocated to Upper Mount Clair. Throughout his time in Mount Lebanon, Munns had a tight-knit group of friends who stuck by his side from childhood to adolescence. They witnessed his growth from a carefree kid playing in the dirt behind Lincoln Grade School to a confident and mature high school sophomore. These friends were there for all of Munns' milestones, from his first attempts at sports to learning how to drive and going on his inaugural date. After finishing high school, Munns continued his education at the local senior high school before moving on to Gettysburg College post-graduation. His family's relocation to Upper Mount Clair, New Jersey marked a new chapter in his life. Driven by a strong desire to serve in the military, Munns fulfilled his dream during the tumultuous Vietnam War era after completing college. Opting for a naval career, he assumed the role of payroll officer of the United States ship Cacapan, a refueling ship stationed in Subic Bay, Philippines. Munns's dedication to military service was unwavering, guiding his journey from Pennsylvania to New Jersey and eventually to his position on the United States ship Cacapan. Despite the inherent dangers of his wartime duties, Munns embraced his responsibilities without anticipating the tragic turn of events. On the fateful night of January 17, 1968, the struck when Munns mysteriously vanished from the United States ship Cacapan. Having recently taken on the role of paymaster on the ship, stationed in Subic Bay, Philippines, his sudden disappearance left the crew bewildered and searching for answers. Upon learning of the situation, the Naval Criminal Investigative Service promptly involved Special Agent Raymond McGaddy. Complicating matters further was the discovery of $8,600 missing from the dispersing office safe. Munns was last spotted above deck, heading towards his office around 2 a.m. Authorities suspected Munns due to his position as paymaster with access to the funds. Efforts were made to locate Munns by checking embassies across Southeast Asia, including Hong Kong, Kaohsiung in Taipei, and Manila. However, these attempts proved to be unsuccessful. Consequently, the Navy classified him as a deserter and closed the investigation in 1968. Munns's family received a letter informing them about his disappearance, which left them with a sense of unease when they discovered that $8,600 had also gone missing. The family strongly disagreed with the government's belief that Munns may have stolen the funds, as they believed such behavior was completely out of character for him. According to his family, Munns was a friendly and adventurous young man who would never commit such a serious offense. The Munns family endured 8 years of increasing agony, which was further compounded by the death of Munns's father from a heart attack. In 1976, the family decided to request that Munns be legally declared deceased, leading to a plea for a memorial service and burial at Arlington National Cemetery. However, the Navy denied this request, citing Munns's deserter classification and reserving such honors for those who were honorably discharged. Munns's sister, Mary, refused to accept the idea that her brother would be remembered dishonorably for eternity. She embarked on a quest for the truth, turning to the internet for help by posting a plea on a Vietnam Veterans Bulletin board in the mid-1990s. In response, a former officer named Tim Rosaire agreed with Mary's skepticism about Munns's alleged theft and disappearance. Further investigation by Munns's sister revealed that despite the theft, there was still a significant amount of $51,000 remaining in the Cacapon ship safe after his disappearance. The fact that Munns had only taken $8,600 raised doubts about the official account, intensifying the family's determination to uncover the truth behind Munns's perplexing vanishing. 30 years after his disappearance in 1998, the case was reopened by the Naval Criminal Investigative Service Cold Case Unit. Interviews with former crew members of the United States ship Cacapon where Mons served, revealed that many believed foul play was involved, challenging the initial assumption that Mons had deserted his station. A potential suspect named Michael Edward Lebrun, who served as a petty officer alongside Mons in 1968, emerged during the reinvestigation. Lebrun suggested that Mons had stolen money during the initial inquiry and even speculated that Mons might have gone scuba diving in the middle of the night, which seemed unlikely. Working in the dispersing office with Mons, Lebrun had access to the ship safe. The Naval Criminal Investigative Service interviewed Lebrun 4 times in the fall of 1999. During these sessions, Lebrun cooperated and admitted on November 20th, 1999 that he believed he might have been involved in Mons's death and disappearance. He also mentioned repressed memories and requested help in finding a therapist to recover those memories. After minimal contact for about 10 months, Lebrun became the primary suspect by September 2000, leading Naval Criminal Investigative Service agents to re-interview him. On September 21, 2000, Naval Criminal Investigative Service agents, Special Agent Carter and Corporal Hughes from the Missouri Highway Patrol unexpectedly visited Lebrun at his workplace. Hughes informed Lebrun that they were conducting an investigation and asked him to accompany them to the Missouri Highway Patrol office for an interview. Lebrun, despite not revealing the subject of the investigation, agreed to participate in the interview, suspecting that it might involve criminal allegations against his employer. He was transported in an unmarked patrol car and was not restrained, with the officers assuring him that he had the freedom to leave or end the interview whenever he wished. Upon arrival at the interview room, which was decorated with enlarged photographs from Lebrun's life, Naval Criminal Investigative Service agents Carter and Hughes introduced themselves and began the interview without reciting Miranda warnings. This decision was later deemed deliberate by the district court as Agent Carter argued that it was not a custodial situation. Despite the absence of Miranda warnings, Lebrun testified during the suppression hearing that he understood his rights and believed he was not in custody and could leave at any time. The government acknowledged the use of psychological tactics during the interview, including labeling Lebrun as the prime suspect in Mons' death and warning about the potential negative impact on his family and finances. It is important to note that the agents did not resort to shouting or physical force at any point. Surprisingly, approximately 33 minutes into the questioning, Lebrun confessed to the crime. He admitted to robbing the safe and attacking Mons when he unexpectedly entered the office. Lebrun confessed to attacking Mons, strangling him and violently smashing his head against the deck. He also provided additional details on how he disposed of Mons's body and the stolen money, stating that he dumped them in a tank of fuel oil to eliminate evidence. After Lebrun's admission of guilt, the agents asked if he wanted to apologize to Mons's sister, Mary Taylor, who had traveled from Milwaukee to assist in the interrogation. Lebrun was willing to offer an apology. Taylor, along with Agent Billington, entered the interview room. Lebrun admitted his responsibility for Mons's death and expressed his regret. Following the interrogation, Lebrun allowed his house to be searched. Despite the admission, Lebrun was not taken into custody that day. He was arrested a few days later and charged with felony murder in March 2001. Subsequently, he appealed his trial, claiming he was not informed of his Miranda rights before confessing to Mons's murder. For the next 4.5 years were continuous attempts to exclude his confession from evidence, with it being rejected and then reinstated multiple times. In September 2005, just before the jury selection for his trial began, Lebrun admitted the truth of his confession and pleaded guilty to manslaughter in connection with Mons's case. Consequently, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. This series of events marked the end of a lengthy legal process surrounding the confession and signified the resolution of the case, with Lebrun taking accountability for his actions. Following his confession, was honored with full military rights at a memorial service in Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia in June 2001. A ceremonial casket draped with an American flag symbolized the occasion, signifying the end of Mons' deserter status. A memorial headstone was placed at his burial site, commemorating his service and providing closure to the tragic chapter. The news of Mons's murder and subsequent exoneration was met with shock and sorrow by those who knew him. After he moved, most of his friends from Mount Lebanon lost contact with him. One friend recalls reading a headline in the local newspaper in 2002 about a Navy ensign whose name was cleared after a murder. He was filled with a feeling of unease, as though he somehow sensed that it was Mons. Sharing the news with Mons's friends in Mount Lebanon brought about comparable responses, as he was fondly recalled as a kind-hearted individual with a bright future ahead of him. Today's case takes us to Wolverhampton in the United Kingdom, home to more than 260,000 people, one of which was Ronan Kander. Ronan had been born in November 2005 at New Cross Hospital. He was the second child born to parents Chanda and Pooja, joining his older sister Nikita. He went to Lanesville Primary School before going to the Cowser Academy in Wolverhampton. His parents would separate in 2012 and divorce 5 years later. But Chanda said it was Ronan who had been instrumental in bringing them back together. Nikita said she had never come across someone so caring, so loving, so bright and so popular, adding that her little brother had a massive heart. This was evident in how he cared for other people. If he saw someone on the street in need and struggling, he would always give them money and treat them with kindness and respect. 16-year-old Ronan was described as the heart and soul of his family. He had a fantastic sense of humor and would often play pranks and practical jokes. He was also a devoted Liverpool Football Club fan and, like most teenagers, he loved watching Netflix and playing on his PlayStation. He would sit for hours and draw anime and enjoyed being at home so much, his friends would have to push him to go out. June 29, 2022. It was a bright summer's day in Wolverhampton. 5 days before, Ronan had completed his GCSE exams and was ready to start a new and exciting chapter. He wanted to study sociology, psychology, and law at A level, with big dreams of one day becoming a lawyer. He was also excited to go on the family's first holiday out of the United Kingdom. At around 4:30 p.m., Chanda gave his son and his son's friends a lift to the Midlands Snooker Club on Oxford Street in Bilston. This was a place Ronan had been going to with his family since he was a child, and they would also enjoy meals out there. Before leaving, Pooja gave her son a kiss, told him he looked handsome, and waved goodbye as they set off. At 7:30 p.m., Ronan called his father to ask if he could pick him up and give him a lift home. After getting back to his house on Mount Road, he later set off again to buy a PlayStation controller from a friend. His dad then phoned him and offered to pick him up, but Ronan declined and said he would instead walk home. He put his headphones on, started his music, and set off. 8:56 p.m. Chanda's phone rang. It was Pooja. She had been in Wolverhampton City Centre at her weekly meditation class. She asked him what was happening on Mount Road after hearing that it had been closed off and police had swarmed the area. Chandler went outside and neighbors had started to gather on the street. There were police and emergency services everywhere. He was told that somebody had been stabbed. He said he rang Ronan more than 10 times, but each time it rang out and went to voicemail. He then told a police officer on the scene that his son had not come home. They were shown a picture of Ronan, and one of the paramedics said they were treating someone who did look like him, and tragically it was. When Pooja arrived home, she begged the officers, "Please let me see him one time. He will wake up for his mum," but they said no. At the age of just 16, Ronan Kander died at the scene just 2 doors away from his house. Chanda was inconsolable and needed to be comforted by neighbors. When Pooja found out, she was shattered, as was Nikita, who was on holiday in Crete at the time. A murder investigation was launched. One of the first things the police did was look at the network of CCTV cameras from around the area to try and piece together what had happened in Ronan's final moments. This would give them their first major breakthrough. 2 males were seen brandishing both a ninja sword and a machete, running towards where Ronan was. The cameras then picked up Ronan's scream as he was viciously stabbed. As the investigations into the footage continued, someone handed themselves in to the police after confessing to his mother and uncle that he had been involved. His name was Sukhman Shergill, and he could be seen on the footage alongside Prabjit Vidisa. The 2 were arrested. Also arrested were 20-year-old Josiah Francis and 18-year-old Joseph Whitaker. Prabjit and Sukhman were charged with murder on a joint enterprise basis, meaning that someone could be charged with the crime of someone else if they foresaw the other person was likely to commit said offense. They denied the charge of murder but admitted to carrying a bladed article. Josiah Francis and Joseph Whitaker were also charged with carrying a bladed article and murder, and both denied the charges. Ronan's family, who were being supported by specially trained officers, issued a statement. Ronan was a kind-hearted, loving, caring 16-year-old, our son and a brother, who would do anything for anyone. He was a funny character who made everyone laugh around him. He has taken from us cruelly, and our hearts are broken. We want everyone to pray for his soul now. We will always love you, our son and my brother, and you will live within us now. Question everyone wanted answered was why? Why had Ronan, who had no enemies, been targeted and attacked in such a brutal fashion? Prabji Vidisa was from Walsall and Sukhman Shergill was from nearby Willinall. They were two 16-year-old boys and had gone to school with Ronan. They had got into a disagreement with one of Ronan's friends over an alleged unpaid debt, something that had spilled over into school and resulted in a fight. The more the police looked at the CCTV footage, the more damning evidence they found. On the day of Ronan's death, Prabjit had gone to the local post office and picked up a machete and ninja sword that he had purchased online. He had used his mother's ID to buy them, and when he got to the post office, all he had to do was give them his name and he was handed the parcels. They did not check any ID and simply looked at him and assumed he was over the age of 25. The parcel he had collected that day was one of almost 30 weapons he had purchased online over the previous few months. He would then sell them on to people at school. After going to the post office, he had conspired with the three others, Sukhman, Josiah, and Joseph. It was decided they were going to pay Ronan's friend a visit and scare him into paying back the money it was alleged that he owed. And given the blades he had brought, it was evident it was going to be violent. The four then got into a red Vauxhall Corsa driven by Josiah. Sat in the passenger seat was Joseph and Sukhman, and Prabjit were sat in the back. Just before 8:30 p.m., Ronan had almost made it home. The Corsa had been parked on Beach Avenue and Prabjit and Sukhman got out. They were then seen running towards Mount Road at 8:34 p.m. They ran after Ronan and attacked him from behind. He was stabbed twice, once in the side and once in the chest, with one of them piercing his heart. One of the stab wounds had gone 20 centimeters into his body and the other 17 centimeters. Prabjit had been the one to deliver these fatal blows. Sukhman had brandished the weapon but not used it. As Ronan screamed out in pain, they realized they had not attacked their intended target. It was a case of mistaken identity. They proceeded to run off down the street, back to the car, leaving Ronan on his own as he lay dying. The car then pulled away and drove off towards Birmingham New Road. It would later emerge that they had seen Ronan coming out of the house where the intended victim had lived and assumed that he was the boy they were looking for. Following this, it was now time for them to go to trial. Prosecutor David Mason Casey spoke of the significant planning that had been involved and that both Prabjit and Sukhman had discarded their black clothes, face coverings, and the weapons after Ronan was stabbed. He said that Ronan had absolutely no chance whatsoever when he was stabbed. He added, was not the intended victim. That fact makes this case even more tragic than other cases of this type. This was a brutal killing in broad daylight in a residential street in front of members of the public. Both Prabjit and Sukhman testified during the trial, and it was confirmed that Ronan was not the target. They said they had merely wanted to scare the boy who they said owed them money. Prabjit claimed that it had been an accident, and he had only wanted to poke around with the sword he was carrying. He said it wasn't until Ronan was stabbed for the second time that he noticed it had actually struck him and that it was Ronan. The prosecution hit back saying, I would suggest you don't accidentally stab someone 20 centimeters and then 17 centimeters. Do you? I never intended for the blade to enter the body. You intended to stab that young boy, didn't you? No. I would suggest it must have been screamingly obvious after you inflicted that first 20-centimeter wound to his abdomen that you had done it. You must have felt it happen, didn't you? No. He also denied that he was fascinated with knives, something which had been previously claimed, but admitted he had used false IDs to buy them and then sell them on. Sukhman said he was sad and angry after learning that Ronan had been attacked, and said that he had not been in it together with Prabjit. The prosecution said there is no real evidence of any true remorse. Senior Crown Prosecutor Samantha Dixon called the attack on Ronan a horrifying act of violence and an act of cowardice. Adam Morgan, Prabjit's defense lawyer said, is genuinely remorseful. It is something he will have to bear for the rest of his life. Timothy Hannum KC, who was Suckman's defense lawyer, said, this was a joint enterprise offense, but a distinction can be drawn between the two defendants. Mr. Vidasa was the one who actually killed Ronan. Mr. Vidasa was the one who stabbed him, not Mr. Shergill. The trial would last for 5 weeks. After 2 hours of deliberations, the jury had returned their verdict. Both Joseph Whitaker and Josiah Francis, who had been in the car that day, were acquitted of all charges. At Wolverhampton Crown Court, Prabji Vidisa and Suckman Shergill were found guilty of murder and were found to have acted in joint enterprise in the killing. Before they were sentenced, Mr. Justice Chowdhury lifted the restrictions that had surrounded the case due to the age of the accused, and both Prabjit and Suckman were named in the press for the first time. Ronan's family sat and sobbed in the gallery as they wore shirts with justice for Ronan on them. Ronan's mom Pooja told the courtroom that she had replayed the last time she saw her son over and over in her mind. She spoke directly to his killers saying, if there is a God, they will show you the real justice my son deserves. Mr. Justice Chowdhury's sentencing remarks were televised, the first time this had ever been done at Wolverhampton Crown Court. Detective Inspector A. George, who had led the investigation into Ronan's murder, said following the sentencing, 1 year on from Ronan's murder, a vigil was held to remember him. Around 70 people gathered on Mount Road where doves were released and poems were read out. His family also started a fundraising campaign for Save the Children. Help families in Yemen in his memory, a fitting tribute for someone with a heart as good as his. It was later announced that the Kander family were going to head down to Parliament to call for tougher action to be taken against knife crime. Wolverhampton's South East MP Pat McFadden arranged for them to meet with the Minister of State for Crime Policing and Fire Chris Phillip and the Shadow Minister Sarah Jones. Pat McFadden had been working with Ronan's family and said he hoped it would convince the members of Parliament that action is needed to try to prevent more young people losing their lives to knife crime. The government later introduced a list of weapons to be banned. The ones used in Ronan's murder were not included on the list. Pooja would later criticize Chris Phillips, saying, this year I met with the Minister for Crime. He requested more information on the weapon used to murder my son to ensure it would be included in the ban. But here we are. This was the opportunity for the government to take real action and show empathy for thousands of families like ours. But they've completely missed it. When I saw for the first time the size of the sword, I fainted in grief, Pooja said. As Nikita said, we need to do more to stop knife crime. You know how easy it is to acquire a knife. You can just go online and you can buy a machete. I want to call out the MPs. I want to call out the Prime Minister. I want to call out society and say that we need to do more to ensure that not another innocent life gets taken from knife crime. Pooja also wrote an open letter to the Prime Minister calling for the online sales of knives, swords, and machetes to be banned. The campaigning work Ronan's family have done to tackle knife crime is inspiring, as is their strength and resilience in the time since his death. His family will continue to fight to change the laws and change communities for the better. Speaking directly to those who carry knives, Pooja had some powerful words. Going to prison isn't some pride and joy. You are going to ruin your life, your family's life. You will have to live with the guilt for the rest of your life knowing you've killed someone. So stop now before it's too late. Don't pick up the knife. If you have a fight, talk it over, but don't pick up the knife. There are no winners in a case like this. Ronan Kander should still be here, taking on his A-levels and throwing himself into adulthood. Knife crime has claimed far too many lives and ruined too many families as well. Positive steps are being taken in communities such as knife surrender schemes and amnesty bins where people can get rid of their weapons safely. But there is still much more to be done to bring an end to knife crime. The devastation caused by the murder of Ronan Kander is best put into words by his mother Pooja. I miss his laughter. I miss him asking me what's for dinner. I miss hugging him. I have nothing left. It's killing me to think of what happened to Ronan. I can't believe my baby went through this alone. He was my son, my baby. And for his older sister Nikita, life will never be the same, she said. I've never loved anyone as much as I love him. Today's case takes us to a small town in County Offaly in Ireland called Tullamore. In 2022, it was home to 23-year-old Aisling Murphy. Intelligent, motivated, and hardworking, her dream from a young age was to be a teacher, and she was over the moon when she got a job as a primary school teacher at Doru National School, just a couple of months after graduating. She took to it like a duck to water, and her colleagues said it was like she'd always been there and part of their team. Her father said she never stopped and crammed everything she could into her life. One, to try and better and push herself, and also to make sure she was getting the most out of every day. She pushed her students to challenge themselves, but was never one to ask anyone to do something she wouldn't do herself. She even bought a set of ull and pipes, one of the most difficult instruments to learn, but she was determined to prove to herself that she could do it if she put her mind to it. Music and the creative arts was a big passion for her in general and always had been. She had taken after her musical mother Kathleen, and in school she had been in the choir, the orchestra, the camogie team, and the traditional music group, but playing the fiddle had stuck with her since she was little. She was eventually in the top 5% of fiddle players in the country and had played at the Tullamore Tradfest traditional music festival as well. Aisling was a family girl through and through and would always make time for dinner and drinks with her dad Ray, mother Kathleen, sister Amy, and brother Cole. She was also in a great relationship with her partner Ryan. The pair had first met each other at a disco when they were 15. They had dated for a couple of years, but they were very young and went their separate ways. They did keep in contact though, and a couple of years later they reconnected and were inseparable from that point on. They had started making plans to build their dream house together, get married, and start a family. Ryan said she had the most comforting smile and infectious laugh, and no matter how low you felt, she could always pick you up. On January 10th, 2022, Aisling went to Ryan and his family's house to drop some groceries off at the door. They were all isolating as there was COVID in the home, and Ryan said he really wanted to give her a hug, but they just said hi and bye at the door, knowing they would be seeing each other properly in 10 days' time to go on a trip together. 2 days later, Aisling finished teaching as usual and got ready to go for a jog. She worked out whenever she had time, and a quick run down by the canal to clear her head was a normal thing for her to do. Before she left, she told her mom where she was going, but Kathleen was worried, saying she should jog somewhere else. She hugged her mom and said, Mom, I'm 23 years old. Love you," before heading out the door. She was soon out and jogging down by the Grand Canal, a lovely area for some peace and quiet where you can often find people working out and walking their dogs. At 3.15 on Fiona's Way, a walkway named after a missing woman called Fiona Pender, 2 women were also jogging down by the bank and saw and heard something odd. They noticed a bicycle on the side and then heard what sounded like a woman crying from the wooded area next to the pathway. They thought she had fallen off her bike and was hurt, so went to go and help. They saw a man cowering over her and pinning her down. A small necklace hung around the woman's neck. The name on it was Aisling. The man heard them, turned around, and through gritted teeth and snarling, told them to go away. The jogger said the woman was moving every part of her body, twisting and turning, trying to get away, but she wasn't making a sound anymore. Neither woman had a phone on them and there was no one else around. So they both shouted at him that they would call the Gardaí and then ran to the nearest house to get help. Authorities were soon there and found Aisling Murphy, lying there motionless. Her attacker was long gone. Despite the best efforts of the paramedics, Aisling died at the scene. She had been strangled and stabbed 11 times in the neck, dying of blood loss. Her keys were close to her, and it was clear she had tried to fight off her killer using them. Experts said Aisling had clearly fought so incredibly hard to get away and tried everything she could until the very end. The joggers had given a description of the man as best they could. His jacket was distinctive, a navy padded bomber jacket with unique stitching on the back. The bicycle that was near the scene, believed to have been his, was a Falcon Storm mountain bike, with straight handlebars and green on the frame. A number of people who were in the area around that time contacted the authorities, but there was nothing concrete. Accessing the data on her Fitbit, they were able to get a clearer timeline to try and narrow things down. Her workout had started at 2:51 p.m. 30 minutes later, it tracked erratic movements. Just a couple of minutes later, at 3:31 p.m., her Fitbit was no longer recording her heartbeat. The Gardaí issued a statement announcing that they believed they were only looking for one person, and they felt confident that whoever this was totally random and not known to Aisling. They said he would probably have wounds, cuts, or bruising on him given the way Aisling had fought back and used her keys. The detectives would get a lead based off of the descriptions, and just a few hours after Aisling was found, they made an arrest of a 40-year-old man, but he was soon released without charge. The man was taken to safe accommodation when his name and pictures were shared on social media, resulting in him receiving death threats, even though he was innocent. Aisling's case was huge, and everyone was talking about it and trying to help and offer support. It was soon on every news station and flooding social media, both in Ireland and abroad. As always, when crimes like these happen, ones that receive such media attention, people are quick to give their opinions online. And sadly, in this case, many seemed focused on the fact that she was out for a run in a slightly secluded area. Activist Laura Bates wrote an emotional response to this, pointing out that focusing on this is a complicated form of victim blaming. I understand why people are posting she was going for a run. I get why she was just walking home and she did all the right things trended after Sarah Everard died. She posted in part, I know it comes from a place of grief and rage, but it doesn't matter what they were doing. We say she was just doing this or she was just doing that. It suggests that the case wouldn't have been quite so awful or tragic if she had been doing something else. It had now been 48 hours since Aisling was killed, and many a vigil was being held all over, including ones held by big political names across the country. Thousands and thousands of people were turning out for them. The principal of the school she taught at said everyone was so shaken by what had happened. It's very, very hard to think that she was here in school yesterday as a teacher and teaching her first-class students, and today they have come in with little tears in their eyes and their teacher not there. On January the 14th, 100 people stood outside the Irish Parliament in Dublin for Aisling, and by 4 p.m., the number had grown to 1,000, and soon the KSHOC, the Republic of Ireland's Prime Minister at the time, Michael Martin, and the future leader Leo Varadkar would be there too. Leo Varadkar said the murder of Aisling had united the nation in solidarity and revulsion. The investigation was moving quickly, although the Gardaí were keeping their cards close to their chests. On January the 17th, they said that significant progress had been made, as although they didn't announce this to the public, they had actually received a troubling email, which read in part, "To who it may concern, I am the person responsible for Aisling's murder. I am so sorry." The email was sent at 10:44 p.m. and detectives quickly managed to identify where it had come from. They tracked down the person the account had belonged to. The man that had sent it said he suffered from mental health problems and drank too much, blacking out and having little recollection of what he'd done when he was drunk. But sober, he said he didn't know why he had sent it and that he had nothing to do with Aisling's murder. Officers initially felt so confident with this lead, but more checks would rule this man out completely and they were back at square one. But they then got another tip, which would turn into the major breakthrough that they so desperately needed. They had been closely watching a man who had walked into a hospital quite a distance from where Aisling was killed just 2 days after that fateful day. The 31-year-old had turned up looking to treat some bad cuts, bruises, and scratches to his face. Given how quickly the news of what had happened to Aisling had traveled, the Gardaí were called in by the nurses at the hospital, wondering if there was a link. The man couldn't explain his injuries and was keeping quiet, but he was in quite bad shape. When detectives got there, they too were suspicious and carried out a background check on him. Following this, they went to seize and search 2 cars and search 2 properties as well, one over an hour away in Dublin and one just 8 minutes away from where Aisling had been killed. They interviewed the 31-year-old in hospital and he told them he had been attacked by a man in a blue face mask, a hard thing to pick out, given the fact that the pandemic was still ongoing and most people were in masks. He claimed he couldn't really remember it at all as it had happened so quickly. Detectives weren't convinced and showed him a picture of Aisling. He said he had never seen her before, not even on the news. "I look at the news but don't speak English, can't understand it," he said. They knew there was more to the story but left him to stew over what they had said, ready to come back and talk to him later. A short time after he spoke to the detectives again. This time he told them the man that had attacked him also attacked Aisling as they were all on the same path. He claimed he had tried to save Aisling and not hurt her. But then his story changed again. He suddenly blurted out, "I did it, I murdered, I am the murderer." He was immediately cautioned and was told he did not need to say anything else. but he couldn't stop talking. He said, "I'm sorry. I see girl I never see before. Knife I use for chain. When she passed I cut her neck. She panicked, I panicked." He then started crying and asked, "Will I go for 10 years?" He pointed to his stomach, which had 3 puncture wounds likely inflicted by Aisling's keys. He gave a DNA sample and sure enough, the DNA from under Aisling's fingernails was a match to him. As detectives continued to piece things together, on January 18th hundreds of people gathered for Aisling's funeral. It was attended by the then Patriarch McCall Martin, President Michael D. Higgins and his wife Sabina, and Minister for Justice Helen McKenzie. Schools around the country observed a minute's silence at 11 a.m. in her memory as well. Her young students would also pay tribute to the 23-year-old, lining up holding pictures of Aisling as the funeral procession came past. Ryan was beside himself and he gave a huge speech on behalf of his and Aisling's families. He said, "Is the greatest love of my life. I will cherish the last 5 years we spent together my entire life. I hope that someday, God willing, we can be reunited once more and continue the great plans we have made for each other. Goodbye for now, but not forever, darling, as you will live on in all of our hearts and memories." It was already a deeply emotional day and things were about to take another turn. This was also the day that the Gardaí announced the man they had been closely monitoring in hospital had been arrested and charged with Aisling's murder, who would finally identify him as Jozef Puška. He was a builder and had moved over to Ireland from Slovakia in 2015, living in Tullamore with his wife and 5 children. That evening he appeared in Tullamore District Court and the outside was packed with members of the public and media. The Gardaí received more information about Joseph's actions in the hours before he killed Aisling, and it was truly shocking. Anne-Marie Kelly first saw Joseph on his bike. She had stepped aside to let him pass, and he went past really slowly, staring at her in a menacing way, a way that had really unsettled her. Anne-Marie then saw Joseph again at the canal. This time he was walking behind her and pushing his bike. She could feel him staring at her and picked up her pace. Fortunately, she spotted a man in a van pull up and jogged over towards him. Joseph quickly took off. He also followed 3 other women that day, even being caught on camera a few times. After this, he would find Aisling. Authorities believe he was absolutely on a mission to hurt or kill someone. They also described him as a phantom individual, someone that had never been on their radar for any reason until this point. Despite his own confession, he entered a plea of not guilty, stating that he couldn't remember admitting to anything in the hospital. He was now back to the story where he alleged he was trying to save Aisling's life from another man. As he sat in custody, the investigation continued. On the 13th of June 2023, 5 other people were arrested and charged with withholding information or impeding an arrest in relation to Aisling's case. Marek Puška, Lubomir Puška and Lucy Ristikov were charged with withholding information and Josefina Gruncova and Vera Gaziova were accused of impeding the apprehension or prosecution of an alleged offender. By the time his trial started on October 17, 2023, the prosecution had CCTV, DNA, and witness evidence, as well as his own confession. His defense team were still running with the story that he had been attacked by a man, hence his injuries, and after the man had attacked him, he had killed Aisling before running away. They said the 2 women jogging had actually seen Joseph trying to stop the bleeding, not that he had been hurting her. The prosecution called his lies foul and contemptible. They said the fact he was trying to play some sort of good Samaritan was disgusting. The only victim was Aisling. On the 9th of November 2023, after just 2 hours of deliberations, he was unanimously found guilty of murder. As the verdict was read out, he sat in silence, putting his hands over his face. Judge Mr. Justice Tony Hunt did not hold back in his statements after. He told the jury, "We have evil in this room. There is no doubt about that. There will be a day of reckoning for Puška." He said that he agreed with the jury's decision and was glad that they didn't spend any more time than they needed to on what he called Joseph's nonsense. He acknowledged that this was no reflection of his legal team, however, saying what they had in their hands was poor stuff indeed. He described what happened to Aisling as enough to make you physically ill, and given what the jury had had to sit through, he exempted them from jury service for 20 years. As the jury left the room, Everyone erupted into applause. Friday, the 17th of November, 2023 was the day of Joseph's sentencing. Mr. Justice Tony Hunt told Joseph that there was only one sentence to hand down, which he said was richly deserved. Joseph Pushka was handed a mandatory life sentence. Ryan addressed Joseph and said, "I have to somehow carry on without her. You smirked, you smiled, and you showed no remorse, which sums up the kind of person you are, the epitome of pure evil. When your day of reckoning comes, may you be in hell a whole half hour before God even knows you are dead." Joseph did not make eye contact with anyone who spoke, including the judge. Mr. Justice Tony Hunt said that if he had the power, a whole life order would have been considered in this case. He said that before Joseph could be considered for release, the person making that decision would have to take into account that we still don't know why he murdered Aisling. He has never shown any remorse or empathy and has done nothing but lie about what happened, and this will all be taken into consideration. Shortly after he was sentenced, he was transferred to a padded cell in another prison and put under 24-hour surveillance. Sources claim he had made an attempt to take his own life while on trial, and other inmates said they would be looking for him in prison. Joseph's family still believe he is innocent. It is clear to see how much Aisling meant to so many people and how much her death had outraged not just her small community but Ireland as a whole. Some important conversations were started about safety, education, and continuing to tackle violence against women and girls. People banded together and united in such a huge way. Every case is horrific, and it goes without saying they all affect vast amounts of people at a time, but sometimes certain cases are so emotionally charged that they ripple through the nation and further afield, leaving a lasting impact in ways we have not experienced before. Sarah Everard in the UK, cases like Anna Kriegel in Gilma in Ireland and Australia. Now Aisling Murphy. Her partner Ryan said the painful thing to come to terms with is that he will have to remember her for longer than he's known her. Amy said, "Are consumed by what can only be described as nightmares, that we weren't there to save her. Aisling did so much for absolutely everybody, yet no one was there when she needed them most. As a big sister, I could not protect her while she was alive. All I can do now is protect her memory. And as a family, we will continue to set the table for 5. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.